Hey y'all, and welcome back to the Messy Movement Lab. My name is Rashida K. Miller. I am the founder and CEO of the Messy Movement Lab and one of your lead instructors. I am really grateful to be back in the space, and I know that I keep saying that, so you might be like, okay, well, why are you so grateful? Um, this has been a year of transition. It's been a year of release for our family, for the Messy Movement Lab family. And it's also been a personal journey for me in terms of my health. And some really crazy things happened to me health wise over the last 2 years. And it has been really eye opening to see, just how much movement impacts, you know, our ability to feel ease and relief when the body is in distress, and finding movement in various ways that actually fit the capacity physically that you have at that time. And I'm really thinking about this idea of not saying that I'm grateful for my ability to be able to move, um, and I'm sitting with that. What does that mean within a justice context and not just within a religious context? Because there's when we don't have the ability to move, then what are we grateful for? What are we calling out for? And I think we all would like to be as resourced as possible. But when we look at the dimensions of diversity within physical capacity and everybody's, where everyone sits on the spectrum of being physically abled, I don't know that there's one better than the other. And I don't know that there's one to be more grateful for than the other. I like to focus on the idea of just having the opportunity to wake up and be grateful, regardless of what it's for, because at any given moment, life can shift. And if at any given moment life can shift and things can be thrown at us in ways that we didn't expect, do we then lose our sense of gratitude because we're not on the part of the spectrum that's most abled or most resourced to be, maybe move through the world as independently as possible? And as I shared, we also, experienced a big loss this year in my mom passing in September. And Mama Gail really shaped and changed every bit of the last few years of our lives. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. I would have done some things different, uh, just knowing a little bit more on this end of the caregiving journey. But I'm very grateful that we had the opportunity and the time to be together and to hold space for one another, especially in these last few years of her life. And obviously, the death of a parent really just takes literally everything out of you. Um, I thought I knew it when my dad passed, but losing my mom really cut me to the core. And I'm still trying to find ways to process and express and, move through the waves of grief and the waves of longing, for her presence. And it'll be a journey. Within that, I have been really trying to find ways again to get my body moving, to move some of the grief around in my body and not allow for, you know, to become so sedentary. because sometimes grief and just sitting down just makes sense. And so I'm trying to see what it's like to be grieving and go for a walk, to be grieving and maybe have a little dance party, to be grieving and, find something else interesting to do with my body, just to give my nervous system, to give my muscle memory another space to be able to embody and inhabit while also working through the grief. And that's been a real blessing, to be able to move through. Some days I'm up, and some days I'm way, way down. And, as you all know, we like to do a lot of resistance tracking here in the Messy Movement Lab. And so that means, you're not necessarily pushing yourself on the days when you don't have the physical capacity. You are noting the resistance, noting the things that are happening around that, and just kind of gathering your data. After a couple weeks of gathering your data for the first time, you'll see what patterns arise for you in terms of being able to move closer towards or farther away from your movement practice. And as you find that pattern, you'll know how to better work through it with your body and with the experiences or commitments or obligations you have going on from a day-to-day basis. So, with resistance tracking and, allowing myself some grace around all of the big things that have happened, and also giving myself a chance to shift the idea of grief meaning no movement, when grief can mean a lot of movement in various ways. And so you all will see me doing the walking cardio, you'll see me doing a little a stretch practice. You'll see us doing our sensual movement practice, which has been a little bit harder to get into. I will say, it's like, sometimes I'll hear the music and I'll feel the impulse. And so I'm really working on that impulse I'm really working on following through on the impulse and not feeling like, I have to wait for the perfect space and time. So what does it look like to, find 3 or 5 movements that I can do when, like, I hear a song that really calls on that seductive energy, right? Maybe it's hip rolls, maybe it's just sitting with the body in gentle circles, maybe it's activating your core, getting on your knees and getting into that torso. Maybe it's doing some walking in the space, straddling the wall, all things that really remind us that there's another energy that we can tap into. So I guess that's what we're going to do today for today's practice, because like I said, it's been a little bit harder to kind of ease back into that space, especially carrying some of the energy that, is coming up right now. And, I think it could be, the guilt of not wanting to feel like you're feeling too good when things are crazy, or, kind of we just naturally drift away from pleasure when life is stressful. And that's a muscle memory that we have to build up, that pleasure is a fuel and not a reward, right? So we are working from this place that every time I allow myself to sink into this practice, every time I allow myself to do something that feels good, every time I allow myself to, alter the energy in the space, I am reminding the body that it is safe for me to gravitate towards pleasure even when times are stressful, even when times are chaotic, even when times are filled with distress. And it's a muscle that we have to practice using so that the body will naturally gravitate towards that. So let's get into some movement, and I hope you all enjoy.